Hello and welcome to The Agenda on Labour Social. I'm Graham Hughes and I'm joined today by Phil Moorhouse.
Hello.
From A Different Bias. How you doing, Phil?
I'm all right.
You okay?
Yes.
Good. Goody. So we've got loads of comments in already, evening all, says Master Templar. Come on, chaps. His nibs have fallen asleep, so I might last a bit longer, but only if you start. Oh, sorry, we started. That was my fault. I was still faffing around with the look of it. But that works, I think. I don't know. Anyway, Phil, did you have a list of all the stuff that's happened this week?
I wrote I wrote a little list of some of the highlights in the news this week. So let's go through what's happened in the last week. We'll start with the international news, where Russia tried to outcompete the UK for who's got the dumbest leaders. But then everything else was domestic news. So we have the COVID inquiry, which reveals how Brexit prevented us from preparing for the pandemic. We knew this, but it's now a matter of record.
Yeah.
The IMF says inflation is down to corporate profits, not really pay awards. Well, again, we knew that as well. There's been a special report into Tory MPs and peers attacking Parliament, and one of them triggered a resignation. Zach Goldsmith. Now, he was utterly useless, really vacuous. But he hung on in government because he used to pay for Boris Johnson's holidays. He's incredibly wealthy, right? And so he resigned, pretending he was attacking Rishi Sunak for not caring about the environment. Then Rishi Sunak sent him a letter back. Oh, thanks for your resignation. I accept it. That's not usually in there, by the way. I accept your resignation. It's just taken as read. But he put in there, I accept your resignation. In other words, do one. And he said, he basically said in the letter, we asked you to apologize to the Privileges Committee because we didn't think your behavior was fit for a Minister of the Crown, because he was one of the ones named in the Privileges Committee special report. Yeah. And you appeared to have taken this action. So in other words, saying to Zach Goldsmith, you're not resigning over the environment, you're resigning because you wouldn't apologize.
Spitting the dummy out the pram.
And I'll tell you what was remarkable. There were I sort of knew he was a minister, but there's so many political commentators were going, didn't even know he was still a minister. And then I saw Jess Phillips. I'm thinking, how bad a minister are you if even MPs don't know you're a minister?
Yeah.
It's like, Zach Goldsmith resigned from what? From the Foreign Office. Is he a minister? Yeah. Bloody hell. So, and then you've got Braverman and Sunak attacking our judiciary yesterday because they lost a court case. They're in court again today as well. More damaging details about Boris Johnson getting drunk with Russian agents, Thames Water going belly up. More tales of woe from various companies about Brexit. The Rwanda plan was, before it was declared illegal again this week, revealed to be costing up to $169,000 per person. And Rishi Sunak says he intends to send every asylum seeker there. And £169,000 a person. Bravo is still hiding from Yvette Cooper. Yvette Cooper was absolutely ripping the hell out of this document. And it was Robert Jenrick against her. Suella Braverman staying well clear. Well clear.
I thought it was only 100 refugees that they had agreed to take.
Yeah. But
oh my God.
Rishi Sunak's claiming he wants to send all of them. We're not sending anyone. And then today. We've already spent 140 million on it. We're sending no one. We've spent 140 million on greasing a few palms in Rwanda and getting someone to, put some mortar on some bricks. And that's all that's going to be. The Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, had to reveal that Sunak's got no plan for inflation because he was asked what it is. Oh, it's interest rates. No, that's the Bank of England. What's Rishi Sunak going to do? I don't know. Consultants, doctors are now voted strikes. Consultants, so senior doctors. Retained EU law bill has now passed in the Lords. Doing a video on that this afternoon. Unfortunately, our food standards are knackered, as well as a few other workers' rights and so on, because it is now going to be passed into law. Question time audience last night, which was pointed out to be a majority Conservative and Leave voting audience. They were asked,
as always,
if they support the Rwanda plan. Not a single hand went up. The Brexiteers are all outraged because it's not representative. It's like, no, it's not representative. It's mostly Conservative and Brexit supporting. But I will say this. So some of them will say, oh, well, peer pressure, they might not put hands up. I will accept, maybe if they had an anonymous vote, one or two of them would have done. But usually they can be asked questions like this and they will put their hands up. What I would suggest is maybe they change their minds when someone on the panel has explained to them what the Rwanda plan is. Because I would suspect a lot of people saying they approve of it only get the Daily Express version and don't actually. Hey, your thing's going a bit skew there.
I know, sorry.
And don't actually
don't do that.
And don't actually know what it is. So when someone explains to them what the Rwanda plan is, I suspect an awful lot of people, even gammons, will go, no, that's ridiculous. What else was it? Oh, yeah. Nigel Farage wins a fake award by his own employer.
What was this? Tell me more about this, Phil, because this is the Trick Award or something.
I saw this ages ago because I occasionally get Nigel Farage's tweets. So a couple of months ago or something, he was encouraging people to vote for him. Oh, vote for me in this thing, this Trick Awards. I thought, what's that? Never heard of it. Trick Awards. And I think, well, I'm not a journalist. Maybe it's something. It's not a thing. What happens is quite often people put on awards just to make money. It's a money scam. They just get a load of people, oh, we're going to put on some awards. And I actually looked at this voting thing. There were no serious journalists in the list running anyway. But also it was sponsored by GB News. But Nigel Farage is waving his award around. And he threw a right wobbly when they took the tweet down where it said he's won it. Oh, it's disgraceful. And then, so the big news yesterday is being kicked out of his bank. And
I think he just put his PIN number in wrong three times.
There's only one reason for having your bank account closed without a reason given. And that is
terrorism.
No, but not necessarily suspected money laundering or fraud or something, but where they can't be sure. Like banks get into a lot of trouble if they're involved in money laundering, like serious trouble. So they carry out, particularly on, I discovered there's a document on the House of Commons website. So it's called politically exposed people. They are subject to like enhanced checks to make, because they're more susceptible to like dodgy financial dealings. So what's obviously happened is his financial dealings aren't transparent enough for them to be sure that there's nothing wrong. And I'll tell you what's happened this morning as well. Oh, and by the way, in the video on Twitter, the 6-minute long video where he was whining about it, he had to wave his award around first. Oh, look at the award, everyone. I should be happy, but I'm not.
What a week.
But then today there's been other members like of the Brexit party saying, oh yeah, this happened to me too. And I'm trying to say to them, guys, the Brexit, like the Electoral Commission raised concerns about Brexit party financing in 2019, and we never got to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
And now a load of people who were connected to the Brexit party are saying that banks are dropping them without reason. Aren't you drawing attention to the fact that maybe there is something shady going on? Because there's a common denominator going on here. But anyway, that was that. And then what else? Oh, yeah, as I say, the government are back in court again today. It turns out they misled the High Court. So at one time, they told the High Court that they couldn't get the information from Boris Johnson's phone or something like that. Now they've changed the story today.
Oh,
they're saying, oh, yeah, we absolutely should get this information and we're taking steps. The steps, by the way, were in January. They asked Boris Johnson to hand the phone over and he told them to sod off. So that's the steps. I don't know why they haven't forced it off him because they've got a warrant. But yeah, and a court reporter I follow says that judges tend to take a dim view of this. Yeah, I think judges probably don't like it when you lie to them. So I imagine the court case that's going on today, which remember is the Baroness Hallett, the former judge who wants the government to hand over a load of information for the COVID inquiry. The government are resisting, saying, no, you don't want to see that. And she's going, yeah, I do. So that's what the court case is about. And it doesn't sound like it's got off to a good start for the government. I think we're up to date. Oh,
is
yeah.
That everything?
No, the government also reckon they've got a 15-year plan to save the NHS, which bear in mind means they're recognizing it takes 15 years to clear up their mess.
Yes.
But no. Part of this plan, they've mentioned this before, part of this plan is shorter degrees for doctors. In other words, doctors will have less training. I think that's most of the highlights.
It's been one hell of a week, hasn't it?
In a normal country, you would not have all of that in 1 week.
No.
And also it was international, admittedly, but the rest of it is in this country.
Well, that's some more international news this week, where the recording of Trump admitting that classified documents came out. Because we had the transcript before, but we didn't actually have the actual recording. And it's unbelievable. Like when the transcript came out, they had people like actors doing the voice of Trump and pretend, but it was nowhere near as good as
No,
Trump
it's
actually.
Trump
Go and look at
talking.
this classified documents.
The thing about Trump is you can produce a perfect transcript of what he says, and then listening to him say it always sounds 100 times worse. Always. He has a
But,
gift.
like, he's like a child going,
Yes,
check out me new Transformer toy.
That is exactly what he is.
Oh my God, I shouldn't be showing you this. This is classified. This is classified information. And then when they asked about it, he went, oh, no, I was just joking. It's just like, yeah, they weren't. Anyway, I declassified them, so it was all right.
Well, yeah, he got his Sharpie out and wrote declassified or something, didn't he? I'm the president, I can do what I like. The last president that said they can do what they like ended up in disgrace, didn't they?
Well, yeah, well, that was him, wasn't it?
Well, before him, Nixon. Unfortunately, Trump had to be voted out. Nixon at least walked.
Well, yeah, at least Nixon had a little bit of dignity, a little bit of honor, compared with Trump, though. But yeah, so I did the video yesterday about the Rwanda situation, and in the comments, people were pointing out stuff that makes the whole thing even crazier than it already sounds. And one of the ones is that for anyone who goes over to Rwanda, any refugees who send over there, they're going to send a refugee over here.
Well, basically, the Rwanda, if you look at it on the website, as I did months ago when it was published there, last year, in fact. So it talks about Rwanda having, as you said earlier, they're saying we can probably only take this many a year. But then it talks, and they never mention this in the Express, it talks about us bringing asylum seekers from Rwanda back, but there's no numbers mentioned. So it could easily be 1 for 1, or we might be bringing back more than we send. In fact, if we bring anyone back, we're bringing back more than we send, because we're not sending anyone. Because if unless the Supreme Court accepts the government's argument, then that'll be it.
Do you think that the Supreme Court might? Because so far we've had 2 judges approving of it. 2 out of the
3.
One
so
of
it means 1 judge accepted the government's argument. So you can never, in a situation like that, it's clearly not clear cut. At the end of the day, the government won the original case. So therefore, at least 1 judge agreed with the government. Then 1 judge agreed with the government on the Court of Appeal. So it's almost like 2-2. So of course you can't prejudge what the Supreme Court may do.
But I mean, how long is this going to take? Because there was also something as well, which was on Wednesday evening. Thingy Chakrabarti, Rita, she's the news presenter. Forgot her name is Baroness Chakrabarti, that's called, in the House of Lords, tabled an amendment to the Illegal Immigration Act, saying that it had to be covered by.
Thankfully, it's not an act yet, but
bill.
Yes, it was. The government got defeated all over the place, didn't they?
But I think that it had to conform to international law or the European Convention on Human Rights, and then that got battered back to the Commons. So, is it likely that this bill is ever going to go ahead?
As long as the Lords insist that it must comply with our international obligations, as long as they insist on that, and who knows, then no, because it can't comply with our international obligations in its current form. Now, it's not to say you can't have offshore processing, but for example, you can't have a situation where they are. The main argument from those opposing it in the court were, I'm not sure who the plaintiffs were here, but the main argument was that there's no guarantee that Rwanda won't just, because they're supposed to do all the processing. There's no guarantee that they can be trusted to do it properly and not just say, oh, we've trousered all the money from the UK, so now we're just going to send you back to Syria or something.
Yeah.
Or Afghanistan. Yeah. So it's like,
and also they've got a very recent record of shooting dead refugees for protesting against the lack of food in the refugee camp. That was only 2019, and then when that was put to the what's her name, Cruella, she pretended that she didn't know about it.
Well, I mean, that could be true. She doesn't know very much at all.
No, but I mean, doesn't that show that she hasn't done any due process on this? She hasn't done any research.
There is no due process. Everyone knows that this is illegal. It's everyone knows it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, indeed. Just jump into the chat for a moment. Trump should be in an asylum, says Daniel. I can't disagree with that. Houghton says, cheers. Most illuminating part is how much he couldn't fit in. He's a content treasure chest. I don't know what it's referring to. Someone else's comment there. Lee Funcher says, for those that like to know more about Nixon and other old US history like that, listen to Richard Maddow's 3 podcasts, Big Man, Ultra, and Deja News. Wes G is saying we should have foreign interventions to install welfare systems in other countries by force.
Unfortunately, that tends to go quite badly wrong when we do that. It's one of these things, like when people are being shitty to their own people or people in their own country, you sort of feel as a world, as a human population, we should interfere. But things like economic sanctions and diplomatic sanctions ultimately are the way to go, because every time we intervene militarily, we know
we just make it worse.
We just absolutely make it worse.
Well, I was thinking about that with what happened in Russia over the weekend, which was that if Prigozhin did actually take over Russia, he would be worse than Putin. This is a guy who murders people with sledgehammers.
Yeah.
Like, he is an absolute. I mean, we know that Putin's a psychopath. This guy's off the charts.
And the thing is, like, some people are now fearing the actual collapse of the Russian state, because not because everyone loves Russia, but because they think, well, hang on, who's going to get the nuclear missiles then?
Yeah. And also, if Russia breaks apart into its, into different oblasts, which all become warring republics over, territory and stuff.
I mean,
where are the nuclear weapons stations?
Well, it's the nuclear weapons that are the concern. If Russia descends into like civil war for the next generation, most of the world won't really care that much. China might a little. Most of the world won't, because it's like, well, while you're killing each other, at least you're not messing about with us. But it is the fear of the nuclear weapons.
Yeah. Although, the idea is the idea that their nuclear weapons are still operable.
Well, but if we could be certain they weren't, there was absolutely no reason for NATO not to have defended Ukraine properly, and this would have all been over.
Yeah.
I mean, it should have all been over in 2014. Actually, we could have intervened then.
Yes.
And didn't.
Yeah. Wes is saying that was the play, Graham. It was to make us think that Putin is the good dictator.
Again, people keep trying to look for cunning plans here. As a lot of actual Russian observers note, don't look for a cunning plan. Russia is a brutal country ruled by brutal people. They rise to the top by acts of brutality. They're not clever. They're really not clever. They're thick as mince.
But then again, I mean, for Putin to have played the US and the UK so well in the
doesn't mean he's clever. It just means he was advised by cleverer people.
Yeah, Trump election and Brexit.
Yeah,
but both of them have kind of backfired in a way, because when he decided to go into Ukraine, because he was obviously waiting to go for Trump's second term in office and hoping for. What he wanted was Trump to lose the election, Trump to have an insurgency, Trump to take over government and just be, destroy America's standing in the world. And then he would roll into Ukraine and there'd be no resistance. And obviously that didn't happen. But also he thought that the cleaving the UK out of the EU would give him an opportunity to do something like this. Because he knew that although the UK has always been a little bit of a thorn in the side with the EU, it was always strong on international military cooperation.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, that's a completely separate issue. Like the EU, although the EU is now sort of starting to consider like military policy, it's not a military organization. That's NATO.
No, but I mean, the speed that the EU responded to.
I mean, really, if
the invasion.
If Putin was clever, he wouldn't have just worked to install Trump. He'd have worked to install Corbyn as well.
True.
But even then, I mean, like, unlike in America where you can make it partisan, Labour would never have supported not defending Ukraine.
Yeah.
So, it was never going to work realistically.
Yeah. We just got a super chat from one angry pagan saying Starmer had Lords abstain on free school meals. Has this just happened, or
there's the policy that again. So Labour have said this week they won't commit to free school meals for everyone. There are sensible economic reasons not to as well, but also I will always point out when they say they won't commit to something, it doesn't mean they won't do it. If they say they won't do it, they'll say they won't do it. They will rule it out, like they have done with, for example, joining the EU
and the single market.
Yeah. So if they just simply say they're not committing to it, it literally means that. It means we need to make the figures add up in order to win the election. Because if the Conservatives can spy any daylight at all between our spending plans and taxation plans, then we will be crucified in the media. So it's and it all happened before 1997 as well. In 1997, it was exactly the same. I remember as a young, because I was young and I was thinking, oh, this is very good. Where's all the Labour supposed to be like, investing? It doesn't sound, these don't sound like much in the way of investment plans. And then we got shitloads of investment. Now we won't get crap loads this time because the economy is knackered, but we will get more than Labour are committing to.
Yeah.
In fact, they've even said as much. The phrase they're using is, we are trying to under-promise and over-deliver.
Yeah. Just a shout out to Johnny out there for being a member for 1 month. He says Trump and Bojo both bought and paid for by Russia, which is very true. And we've got Master Templar, £5 super chat. Thank you very much. Putin uses a body double. One stays 5 feet away from top general, safe in his bunker. The other goes out and performs media stunts.
Well, this is it. 5 feet away. Sometimes you see him on that massive table of his that's like 3 houses away. But yeah, I mean, it's a bit obvious, isn't it? You've got pictures of him actually out, mobbed by the public, and then you see him where he is actually as he is, on a table 100 meters long.
Yeah.
And, where he needs it's an intercom to talk to someone.
Talking of Russia, we missed out. I don't know if you mentioned this and I missed it, but there was a documentary Dispatches on Channel 4 this week about Boris Johnson's connections to the Lebedev crime family. The daddy Lebedev who bought the Evening Standard and the Independent in the was it 2010?
Yeah, and both of whom, senior and junior. But like Evgeny Lebedev, the junior one, the one who's in the House of Lords, he was investing heavily in property in Crimea when it was annexed.
Yes.
Anyone who can't see that his wealth derives from Putin's patronage is blind.
Yeah. But when we sanction Roman Abramovich, but we don't sanction either Alexander Lebedev and his son eventually.
Or indeed any of those. Abramovich was famous. So it was a way of like making an example of one to make it look like we were taking action.
Yeah. Yeah. But the fact that Lebedev, the younger Lebedev Jr., is a legislator in our upper house for life is beyond disgraceful. And they asked the Queen to intervene. They asked the Queen to say no.
Yeah. The funny thing about that is, though, he's never actually turned up until this week. So ironically, because the government were getting, and this was to do with the illegal migration bill, I think, he turned up because the government were going to get absolutely battered. So they tried to get everyone they could to vote for the government.
Yeah.
And I thought, it's not a great week to turn up, mate.
Did he vote?
I assume so. There's no other reason to turn up. He's never turned up before.
That's such a disgrace. I mean, these people who vote Conservative and support Boris Johnson and see themselves as very patriotic, and we're being played by another country, a dictatorship that hates us. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, this is fine. They pay for the Tory party.
And Boris Johnson, I always hesitate to use this word because people use it too freely, but Boris Johnson is absolutely a traitor to this country.
Yes. Absolutely,
I mean, there's a lot of people who they're destructive, but they're not actually deliberately betraying the country, as Boris Johnson is. Even if it's not his motivation, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. He's a disgrace. One Angry Pagan's asking, any more good news on Labour policy? Any detail?
Not really more detail. They've been going on housing policy this week. But I mean, it's one of these, we'll just have to wait for the manifesto now. The problem is at the moment, they did start announcing spending plans and then gone, oh no, the economy is even more knackered than we thought. So the cabinet so at the moment it's all like bad. But so we'll just have to wait for the general election to be called. I suppose the conference, something will be announced at the conference. You always announce something at a conference. So that's this September, isn't it? So that'll be I think that's in Liverpool again this year, isn't it?
It is. It is in Liverpool.
So
I'll be going. Will you be going?
No.
Why not?
It's boring.
Fair enough. Can't argue with that. You know, we both
it's like just a really boring way to catch
channels. It's a boring way to catch COVID. Oh my god, they should make that the slogan, the tagline.
I'll watch it because they stream it anyway. So I'll watch like the the speeches and stuff. But at least I can just then do it. I don't have to get stuck in a hall.
Yeah.
The actual event itself is dull.
Ernie Burns is saying, yeah, Johnson knows, I guess, that he's a traitor, or he wouldn't have hidden his phone. This is very true.
Well, the phone thing. I mean, Boris Johnson's insisting he wants the inquiry to have the phone. In which case, why didn't he just bloody well hand it over there?
Well, exactly.
Actually, no. I understand he can't hand it over to the inquiry unless a court orders it. But he should hand it over to the government. The government have asked for it.
Yeah.
So why don't you hand it over to the government then?
Well, Lee Cruz has put Labour can't commit to anything until they know the full extent of the Tory inflicted damage to the economy. And this is a point that I've made, and Phil, you've made this a lot about the fact that, especially when it comes to Starmer's pledges when he was running for leader, like that was pre-COVID. That wasn't just like, that was pre-COVID, pre the invasion of Ukraine and pre Liz Truss and the Kwasi-Kwarteng kamikaze budget. And now they're looking at how much money they're going to have to play with. And I believe that it was reported this week that our borrowing has now gone over 100% of our GDP.
Yeah.
When Labour left, it was about 66%.
Yeah, and it would have been coming down because we were following the same trajectory as Germany, which was, it was classic Keynesian economics. You borrow in the tough times and then you pay it back when your economy's growing again. You make sure you keep the infrastructure going, for which you'll need to borrow when you've got economic contraction, but then you sort of pay it back. It would have gone back. With Germany, it went back down. Now, there were several countries. It wasn't just the UK where it just carried on going up, but the UK was one of those because the Conservatives went, right, what we should do at these stringent times is to shrink the size of the state. Right, so you're going to stop businesses being able to trade easily.
Yes.
Then. Okay. How does that
and
work
also
out?
Stop people having disposable income. Like people are living hand to mouth. They're spending all of their money on their rent, on food, on keeping warm. They've got nothing to spend on luxury goods, which is all Britain really makes, or financial products. There's no money left over at the end of the week.
Absolute nonsense. So inevitably what happened, they kept talking about the deficit. Well, how's the deficit going? Have you cleared the deficit? No, you haven't. You've never cleared the deficit. So that was nonsense. We just ended up with a load more national debt and a stagnant economy. The economy has been stagnant. Now, you could say right back to the banking crisis, but, Labour were in power for 2 years after the banking crisis. The Tories have been in power for 30. The rest of the world recovered from the banking crisis a long time ago.
We were on the way to recovering until the 2010 election. And then the Tories got in and they thought the best way to revive the economy was by taking money off everyone.
Yeah. I mean, they knew it wasn't, unless they really are stupid. But anyway.
So One Angry Pagan's dropped in a super chat. So predictions on when we'll get a general election. Hand it over to Phil on this one.
I still think next May or June. The three main windows are this autumn, next late spring, early summer, or next autumn. This autumn, there's a lot of things Rishi Sunak's doing, which to me sounds like he wants more time. So I don't think his mind is to do it. I think it would be their best call because I think they're just going to lose more seats the longer they delay after this autumn. I think it's just going to get worse for them. But I don't think they see that. I think next summer, because summer, first of all, you're starting to, like at the moment, Rishi Sunak's going on about, waiting lists are coming down. It's because it's summer, you dickhead. Have they come down compared to last summer? No, you're comparing to winter, aren't you? I haven't actually double checked, but they will be comparing to
Yeah,
winter.
yeah, yeah. Or when they
Because
talk about the
this in
economy
NHS has
growing,
been on
and
strike for the last half a year. Of course, it
yeah,
hasn't got any better.
I noticed that when Prime Minister's questions, whether they're talking about the economy growing or trade growing or exports growing, they always compare with the pandemic. Literally, when
Yeah,
everything went to zero,
without
yeah,
inflation
we're
factored
doing
in. Yeah,
better than yeah. Or when they talk about how much money goes to the NHS, they talk about it in absolute terms. So they say
yeah.
we're giving X many billion more than we did a few years ago. Yes, because of inflation, you have to do that.
Also, more of it's going to just straight to practice. The counting, the stuff like the test and trace 37. We didn't spend 37. It was about 30 billion pound in the end or something, but that counted as NHS spending.
Mm,
None
yeah,
of it went to the
yeah,
NHS.
yeah. Ernie says, when we start to reverse this mess, will the improvement be such a relief? Will it be quick?
It won't be quick. It wasn't quick last time. It can't be quick this time. I mean, apart from anything else.
It
So
was
you look
pretty
at,
quick in 97. I mean, between
we saw a
97
lot
and
of improvements,
2001.
but specifically to the NHS, it took some considerable time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And if you think about like Labour's plan, training more doctors, nurses, things like that, okay, great, 10 years.
yeah.
So because you've got to build the places, you've got to have more medical places, you've got to then encourage people to take up those places. You've then got the 5 or 6 years of training, then you've got a few years to become like reasonably experienced, so you're no longer a junior house officer. And you're talking 10 years before that.
Yeah.
It
Big
makes a
shout
dent.
out to Robalaris there for £10 super chat. Thank you very much, Robalaris. We will spend it wisely. Unlike the government that just spend
No.
stuff on awful things. I think also, I mean, the next term of Labour government, if they get in 2024, the whole time is just going to be fixing the problems that the Tories created.
Yes.
Of coming
Well,
some
there
way
will
to.
be reforms in there as well. As I say, Starmer at the moment, for whatever reason, whether it's because they're just not good at messaging, we've talked about that, or whether it's deliberate, he's not really talking about his reforms very much. Like the devolution, getting rid of the House of Lords. Like there's even people now sort of saying, "Oh, is he still serious?" Because he's talking about packing the House of Lords out. And it's like, well, he hasn't said not, but has anyone asked him? But he seems to be very keen on that, like personally keen on it. So there's a lot of reforms coming,
Yeah.
and he's not talking about it. And I know at the moment they might be thinking, well, more people are interested, because you can look at reforms like that and see it as ideological. Like people understand that if you're talking about the economy, they get that should mean more money in their pockets. Or if you talk about the NHS, that should mean that they can get treatment more quickly. Whereas if you talk about, we're going to get rid of change the House of Lords for this, for that, well, they don't really know what the House of Lords does now, so they're certainly not going to know what the new one does. So you can argue there might be strategic benefit in not talking a lot about it, but he isn't talking about it for whatever reason. And there are a lot of big changes coming. So that will go alongside the fixing as well. So there will be big changes. And we know that the first big change they're going to introduce is the Employment Rights Bill, which will involve, and they're going to repeal the anti-strike legislation that has come in the last few years.
Yeah.
They're not rolling it right back to the 1970s. But the last few years, anti-strike legislation is going, including the stuff that's still ongoing that may well find itself on the statute books.
Yeah.
And Employment Rights Bill. But they won't even be able to say what detail is going to be in the Employment Rights Bill because the Conservatives haven't finished taking away employment rights yet.
Yeah.
I mean, this EU retained it, because people might say, well, what's in this Employment Rights Bill? Well, we have to see what bloody rights you're left with, aren't we? Because the retained EU law bill is now past the Lords. It's going to be now law, and it involves allowing ministers to remove hundreds of rules and protections, and some of them are workers' rights. We don't know which ones yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, £10 super chat from Alex Page. Thank you very much. And Hugh is saying it's funny. Tories never used NHS suppliers to get emergency PPE, personal protective equipment, isn't it? Asking in a Desmond Swain way. No, they didn't use NHS suppliers. They used their mates who ran a pub.
I remember at the time, before we knew about the VIP lane, at the time I found it absolutely baffling there were news reports of British-based suppliers of PPE who were supplying all around the world. These weren't dodgy Daves in their, shed. These were proper suppliers supplying other governments around the world, first world countries. And they said, we will prioritize NHS orders, but we're not getting any. And I thought to myself, what the hell are they playing at? And I couldn't work it out. And it all made sense when we found out about the VIP lane a long time after.
Making a lot of money for their mates and themselves, backhanders.
It was literally giving someone a load of money saying, buy this stuff off.
Surely.
Go onto Google and just find somewhere to buy it. And lo and behold, that meant we had to pay well over the odds because these people didn't know anything about procurement for a start.
No.
And also a lot of the time what they bought, because like you or I, if we just randomly bought something from China, I mean, it's like getting something from Wish, isn't it? It's like, you don't know what you're going to get. And that is frequently what happened. We have ended up with a load of PPE that the government had the nerve to include in their figures whenever they were saying, oh, we've bought this much PPE, that was utterly useless and is in landfill. In fact, at the moment, it's still in storage, isn't it? It's bound for landfill or something, but we're still paying storage, I believe.
Still paying storage for faulty PPE.
But for PPE, we can't use. Use it.
Yeah.
We were better off with the bin bags.
Yeah. Ernie says the Tories saw only what they could steal during the pandemic. So here's a question, though. I mean, surely that's illegal. Like, when these people are out of office and the COVID inquiry comes round, surely there's a point where they say, you were profiteering from a time of national crisis, and that's against the law.
I don't know. They'll argue emergency situation, I suspect. The thing is,
they had to line their pockets. I mean, come on.
MPs tend not to make their own dodgy activities illegal because our laws are made by MPs. So usually it's very hard for an MP to break the law, criminal law, when they're stealing national assets, because that would require a government to persuade Parliament to make their own nest feathering illegal.
Yeah.
Which they're I mean, we do have things. I mean, there is like misconduct in public office offences, but I strongly suspect it doesn't relate to allocating funding.
But that's something that should be illegal because obviously we had a similar situation, but an arguably similar type of thing in Liverpool with Joe Anderson, the previous Joe Anderson, not the current Joe Anderson, not the current regeneration of Joe Anderson, our new mayor. The previous mayor gave his son the contract to demolish a couple of flyovers in Liverpool city centre. And there was a massive scandal about this. And also it involved Derek Hatton, if you remember him from the 1980s. It involved him somehow. And again, these things should be illegal. If you are in a position of elected power and you give contracts to your mates or members of your family, that should be a jail sentence.
Well, there's been business leaders who've said, if we behaved like this, we would go to jail.
Exactly. So how is it not illegal for politicians to do this?
Because politicians make the laws.
But I would have assumed that this was just something that was handed down through the generations. So here's something that British politicians don't do. Because we're always quite snooty about other countries and the corruption in Nigeria, the corruption in India. But then the corruption here is off the charts. They're like small beans compared to the corruption in the UK.
I don't know. I don't think we're as bad as India.
You really?
No, I don't think.
Well, aren't we? Isn't Londongrad the number?
It's the money laundering capital of the world.
Yeah.
If you, unless of course you count the British overseas territories, absolutely.
British Virgin Islands and the. Turks and Caicos, Caymans.
See, that's why I would see if I had been an MP. One of the things I would have pushed is for the Home Secretary, the new Home Secretary and the Foreign Secretary, Lammy and Cooper, to be saying to MI5 and MI6 respectively, look, the last government told you to stop looking for signs of corruption of our politics. Can you now start to look, please? Because we'd quite like you to protect our country. The problem is you wouldn't dare have a public inquiry, because what you might find is what you will find, I'm quite sure, is the problem will be so serious that because there'll be no easy way to deal with it. It will actually just cause mass panic to
Right.
reveal the full extent of the problem.
Yeah.
So the problem will be, it's one of these things that does needs to be dealt with behind closed doors, but it does need dealing with.
Yeah.
And it won't be a quick thing, because
Yeah.
the amount of money in London that is not in our interest is enormous.
Yes. Yeah. And it's one of those things that the Tory government, when they get in again in 2030 whatever, or 2040 whatever, they will, if there's not already laws in place to stop them doing corrupt stuff, they will do corrupt stuff. They do
Well-
it. They're like kids. They do whatever they can get away with, because they want to
Yeah.
find out where the boundary is. You know,
Yeah.
oh, and they get excited about, oh, am I getting away with this? You know, the phone call with Matt Hancock, where he was offered 10 grand to appear, sit on the board of directors, and he's like, yeah, that sounds great, yeah, whatever you want to give me, and they can't quite believe they're getting away with it.
They can't be let back in now. The problem is, I think the genie's out of the bottle. They've sort of I think maybe in the past they didn't think they'd get away with it, and I think they can see they can get away with it now.
Yeah,
I think
especially with Boris Johnson just brazening it out.
We absolutely have to have proportional representation. Must.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I could sort of imagine a scenario where the current Conservatives are unelectable for a while, and then they decide to sort themselves out, and then maybe they come back to power under first past the post, and they have a vaguely sensible government. But I do not think it would take very long at all to descend. As soon as they're back in power, the various forces that they're currently in charge would just come straight back out the woodwork.
Well, this is one of the reasons why you need a root and stem reform of our political and democratic system. Just shout out to Kev on there, Kevin Slims with $5 super chat. Speaking of corruption, Nigel Farage bank account, which you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Laundromat, says Kieran.
Well, I mean, it's really this simple. I mean, it's so obvious. I think I even saw Kay Burley saying it on Twitter. If you have been dropped by your bank, and this bank, by the way, is the bank for the super wealthy coups. It's the bank where the king banks. And you need £1 million to even open an account. If you get kicked out of that bank, right, and then and bear in mind, we only know Farage is claiming this. We don't know it's true, by the way. He could be lying, but let's say he's not lying. So if you get kicked out by your bank, and then you say that 8 other banks will not let you open an account with them, something going on.
Why is he being so open about this? Like, why is he telling people?
Because he's trying to claim it's like populist politics, isn't it? It's the establishment. It's not because there's anything dodgy going on. It's because of the establishment. The establishment is after him.
Yeah,
and he waves his award around. Look, this proves that I'm a man of the people. The people voted for me on this award no sod's ever heard of.
It's fake.
I'd love to. Do you know what? If I was the sort of person that did Vox Pops, I would take my camera and a microphone and go down. I'd go to the gammoniest town near me, down the high street, and say, "Have you ever heard of the Trick Awards? You ever heard of the Trick Awards?" They'll go, "What you on about, mate?"
Yeah. I'd like to
what
go
do you
to
think
a
of
gammony
Nigel
place.
Farage winning a Trick Award? What's that? What's he won?
Yeah. I'd like to go with a blank map of Africa with just the borders on it and say, where's Rwanda? That's my trick. Where's Rwanda? Come on. You're so excited about it. You know so much about it. It's a safe country. It's a safe country, Phil. It's a safe country. Yeah. Maybe if you're a white tourist going to Rwanda, it is arguably safer than neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo and Burundi. But at the same point, they've had the same leader in charge, Paul Kagame. I think it's pronounced Kagame. He's been in charge for over 20 years, and he runs the place with an iron fist. And I just the idea that I think it works for people who just see the rest of the world as something far away that doesn't involve us. It's very far away. Why should we care?
Yeah. Well, they don't care as long as it's somewhere else. They wouldn't care if it was France. In fact, Reform UK's plan apparently is, what we're going to do, right? We're going to pile them on a boat. We're going to send to France. We're going to dump them there, as if France couldn't just then bring them back.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
They've got a plan for that, haven't they? What they're going to do? Build a net in the way. We're gonna catapult them to France and build a huge net.
There was a guy on the radio yesterday called in, and he was saying that the RNLI, he wasn't going to give money to them anymore because they were rescuing people drowning in the sea, but they were asylum seekers. And he was talking to Tom Smallbrick, and Tom was trying to get out of him. You are basically saying you want people to drown in the sea, aren't you? And he's like, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is they shouldn't rescue them. He's like, so you are saying they should be allowed, and that's the mentality. That's what we're up against. But we had, that phone in. There was a phone in afterwards, and then Ali Mirage gets on, and all these public school boys going on the radio, and they've all got the same sort of attitude. Like, we do need to do something about the people coming across in boats, but we just don't know what that is. Maybe it's the Rwanda policy. And it's like, we do know what it is. Offer safe routes. That's it. Yeah. 3 words. Offer
we're
safe
building
routes.
Something in northern France at last, but it's a detention centre. Okay, detain them while you're checking if you want. No, call it a processing centre. Oh, you don't need to pay that people smuggler a load of money to risk your life on his shit boat.
Yeah.
British processing centre, just like 20 miles out from Calais or wherever the hell. Go there, put you up. Might not be brilliant accommodation, but it'll be safe and clean. And we'll process your claim. If it's successful, we will take you to Britain. If it's unsuccessful, we will chuck you back. And if anyone comes across in a boat, we'll pick you up and take you back to... We will take you back to France, because that's where our processing centre is.
Yeah.
And I know there will be other issues as well. Nothing's ever simple. But especially when you've got actual people trafficking into the mix as well. But that would deal with an awful lot of it. I mean, there is people say, oh, it'd be way worse with Labour. It's like, so did we have a small boats problem when Labour were in power? No, we didn't.
No.
We were in the EU as well.
Actually, we didn't have a problem with small boats before 2018.
Well, no.
There just weren't any.
Well, why would there be?
People coming over through the Channel Tunnel.
That's because when we...
truck or whatever, but not on a boat.
Yeah. Well, we've still got the thing on the truck. No bastards checking the trucks.
Yeah, I know. You just come in that way. So I don't know why anyone's taking a boat.
It's way easier. We've apparently upped the fine that if someone does get caught, so you can put a lorry driver out of business.
Yeah.
But ultimately, no one's checking them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So...
And also, we've made it easier for people to get into trucks, because before, lorries would turn up at the port and get straight onto a ferry. They would, or the entrance to the Eurotunnel. They would just go straight on. Now they have to queue up for hours in order to... And if the code number hasn't come through from the government, they can't come through the tunnel. They can't get on the boat. So they have to spend the night in Calais. So you've got yourself a 40-foot container lorry. You've got to find somewhere in Calais for it to put it for the night, where it's secure, where no one's going to climb into the back of the damn thing. It's like, we've taken a situation that was, not optimal, and we've made it so much worse.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating. Andrew AB is asking, would you accept a complete amnesty to corruption with the proviso that we completely overhaul the system to prevent?
No, because
I wouldn't either.
Not at all. Apart from anything else, corrupt people, if you give them an amnesty, all you're doing is saying, okay, so I can just carry on then. You wouldn't trust those people to reform the system.
Yeah. Yeah. But if Labour get in, and they make it a 3-line whip to change the law to make sure that the corruption can't happen, you would assume that that they wouldn't be thinking, oh, well, I'll get done for corruption, which is good.
You would hope so. You would hope. But, the other problem is what priorities will they see? Because there's so much legislation going to be needed as well. I can see how it will work out. They'll think to themselves, we absolutely need to deal with corruption, but we're not corrupt. So actually, we could leave that for a few years while we put in place, because if they introduce anti-corruption laws that bind politicians, will the public see the benefit to themselves? No, they won't.
No.
That's the problem. So you look at a priority of things. We need to prioritize parliamentary time for things that's going to make an instant positive difference to people's lives. And there's other stuff we need to do. There's this massive in tray, and we're going to get to
portion of representation.
There's always something else.
The EU, universal basic income. One angry pagan saying Thatcherism needs to be rooted out. A new social contract ? The Conservative Party are doing a very good job of rooting out Thatcherism. Just because.
Oh yeah, it's the most insane. Like I had someone today because there's all sorts of. I mean, yesterday we were talking about all the wild rumours about who Starmer's going to reshuffle out of his shadow cabinet. Well, now apparently it's that Suella Braverman's going to get the chop, and it's like, I absolutely accept that if Sunak could get rid of her, he would do, because she's an idiot.
Yes, she
and
is.
she's not helpful. But at the end of the day, if she's got she had parliamentary support, that's why she's in the cabinet in the first place. That's why he needed her support. If he's neutered her support, yes, he will sack her, because of course he will. She's useless. But if she still has that support, he can't sack her. But, you know, it's someone at the news of this in the Daily Express was saying, oh, get rid of all the conservatives. It's like, what's Suella Braverman trying to conserve? She's not a conservative. If Margaret Thatcher, if zombie Thatcher came back, she would whack Suella Braverman around the head with her handbag. I mean, I would accept that what we're seeing at the moment is the natural trajectory of Thatcherism.
Yes.
But Thatcher herself,
which will eat itself. Yeah. But it's capitalism. Capitalism will eat itself. Capitalism will always end in a monopoly or being bailed out by the taxpayer. So capitalism will always, you know, the end game of capitalism is socialism, because you will always socialize the losses. And we're seeing this now with Thames Water, where they took all this money from us for our water rates. They took all this money that they borrowed, that they never had any intention of paying back, and they just spent it all on hookers and gin.
Yeah.
By the looks of things. Now we're left, you know, with this £40 billion black hole, which is kind of painful. Duke Vengeance is saying, I was expecting her to be announcing her resignation, but apparently she's just as stupid as I thought she was.
Well, I mean, this is what you would do. Someone was trying to say to me when I said, well, surely if like, for all we know, like, Sunak's surely not going to, like, there aren't going to be real rumours. I think it's just been made up. But they'll probably just see the situation. Suella Braverman, like, you could look at it and you could go, well, Suella Braverman's not succeeding. She's an idiot. And you can just say there's rumours she's going to be sacked because she isn't it, because it's believable. You would believe it. Yeah. Whereas Sunak's not going to show his hand. But if she thought she was going to be sacked, she would jump before she was pushed, I would suggest.
Yeah.
So that, you know, but someone then said to me, oh, but she needs to look loyal for party leadership ambitions. So, well, I don't think she does, because if Sunak can sack her, it means she's got no support in the parliamentary party anyway. So the only thing she'll have on her side is party support. And given that the membership may not be all that enamored of Rishi Sunak, then if she's got party support, she can use that against him. So I don't really buy if she allows herself to be sacked, I don't really see that as a good move.
No. But when you talk about showing your hand, I mean, a lot of the things that the Tories have announced today with their 15-year plan for the NHS just completely cribbed off Labour, as Wes Streeting has pointed out. He said, well, there are ideas. But I mean, that's... Then again, there's part of me that thinks, I don't care who does it, as long as it gets done.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you very much.
It doesn't get done with the Tories. They say this, and what they mean is we're going to privatise it. And when we say we're going to get more doctors, but with shorter training times, what they mean is they're going to get the Alexa app to diagnose you. Yeah. Because that is actually a Tory plan. That is actually the thing they want people to do, to use AI to diagnose themselves instead of a doctor. Then we don't need as many doctors. All you have to do, and Alexa will just get all the information from hypochondria.com. So it'll be like the worst thing ever. So you'll actually, you'll need hardly any junior doctors, but you'll need shitloads of consultants, because they'll all suddenly need specialists for that just bruise on their leg.
Facebook.
That bruise or that rash will be like, you know, something really awful instead of just a rash. Because they won't, because Alexa will ask them, were you rolling around in nettles? Oh, come to think of it, I was.
It's all a bit, But I was also going to say about sort of capitalism versus socialism. Bankruptcy laws are incredibly socialist. Yeah. They're a wonderful socialist ideal where you can mess up your own company as much as you like, or a company that you take over, and face no consequences. There are countries in the world, like the United Arab Emirates, where there are no bankruptcy laws. And if you owe a lot of money, you go to jail. That's it. If your company goes bust owing £50 billion, you are going to go to jail, possibly for the rest of your life. So they like the statement that it interferes. That's why libertarians wind me up so much, because they seem to want a world that has socialism where they want it, like in the military. because we obviously pay for the military out of our taxes, so that's
Yeah.
socialized, and they want it for anything that they themselves can't afford. So they can't
Or,
afford
well,
to
no,
be no
I would say,
bankruptcy laws.
like, the extreme right wing, probably free market capitalism, wants an army to keep people out of the country and a police force to keep the population in line.
Yeah, yeah,
Pretty much it.
yeah. But everything else they can pay for. They can pay for their own medicine, so they don't need socialized medicine. They can pay for their children's education, so they don't need social education. It doesn't interest them.
Yeah, they
And
don't understand that actually it's harming businesses if the workers, when they get ill, just die instead of getting better straight away.
Yeah, or you have a generation of school children who can't read and write.
But that's why they encourage us to have babies all the time. It's like, oh, we can't have immigrants. No, we're full. Sorry. Oh, but by the way, we need to have more babies.
Yes, but we're full at the same time. Schrodinger's Britain. But yeah, one last thing before we go. There was a member of the Labour Party, Neil Lawson, I think his name is, who's been kicked out of the party, and ostensibly it's for putting out a tweet saying that he supported the Greens or something. But I've been doing a bit of research. He's written some pretty anti-Labour, anti-Starmer articles for the Guardian and other things, and I'm thinking they're probably just looking for an excuse to get rid of him. But what do you think about the whole sort of suspending people?
Yeah, as we talked about, so from my point of view, you can't ordinarily, like, there's been plenty of people who've sort of been stopped from standing as a Labour candidate who have been either anti-Semitic, in most cases just attacking the Labour Party. So you can't do that. If I was going to be a Labour candidate, I would even tone down some of what I would say, and I'm hardly like super critical. So that's one thing. When it comes to members, there have been some members expelled who belong to prescribed organisations. My view is there are various political groups, and sometimes it is possible to belong to more than one political group. But if they don't align, choose. It's not unreasonable to suggest that you should choose which political group you are a member of. And if you're not going to prioritise the Labour Party, then leave the Labour Party.
Well, that's also what I don't really understand. It's like, why be a member of the Labour Party and then spend all your time slagging off the Labour Party? It's just a bit of a weird thing
entryism.
To do.
It's like UKIP and BNP like joined the Conservative Party to steer it. The same people try and do the same with Labour. Now, in the case of Lawson here, Neil Lawson, what I would say is I can understand it. He's encouraged people to vote Green Party, and he's written articles attacking Labour, and I can sort of see he can't really complain in a sense. But what I would also say is, from a strategic point of view, he was just a member. He wasn't trying to stand as a candidate, and it doesn't stop him doing what he's doing.
No,
he's still going to run his organisation. He's still going to write those articles. In fact, if anything, it just makes it look petty. So I would have suggested, even though they can absolutely make a case for removing him, I just don't think it makes sense strategically. I don't think he was harming the Labour Party. I don't think he intended to harm the Labour Party either. And whatever harm people thought he was doing to the Labour Party was not because he was a member, but because of what he was saying. He will still say it. He wasn't given his voice through the Labour Party.
But is Owen Jones still a member of the Labour Party?
Oh yeah, I mean, he's definitely should be, because
surprising.
he campaigned against Labour in 2021, Batley and Spen.
So how is he still a member?
Galloway. Exactly. Why is he still a member? Why was Kate Hoey still a member in 2019?
She was still
when
an MP.
She was not only campaigning for the Brexit Party, she was openly, publicly ridiculing Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah.
Why didn't he remove the whip from her? Absolutely.
But Alistair Campbell, they got rid of him the moment he said that he voted for the Lib Dems in the past. Not to tell people to vote for the Lib Dems.
In the European elections, where Corbyn had basically told everyone he didn't want Labour MEPs anyway at that point. Because at that point, although he said at a certain point, I will back a second referendum, at that point he was refusing to honour that promise.
Well, he hadn't said he was going to do a second referendum until after they got
at the previous conference. They said if there were certain conditions, like if they couldn't break the deadlock type thing, then they would suggest we should have a second referendum.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he refused to back that for a very long time, long after he should have done. So come those European elections, he was, all he had to do as well, in fact, polling suggested, because the decent polls were asking, would you vote Labour under these conditions? All he had to do apparently was say that we back a second referendum with Remain as an option. So all he had to say, instead of coming to it too late, and Labour could have actually cleaned up in those European elections.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the polling says, but it is reliable polling.
But you see, if they had done that, then they would have been more secure, and they might have done something really, really stupid, like agreed to go for a midwinter election against Boris Johnson with Jeremy Corbyn still as leader. You see, that's what happens when you get people's egos run away with them. Oh, hang on, that's what actually happened. How did that? What?
Has to
they
be
got
said.
14% of the vote in the EU election.
I am going to stick up for Corbyn slightly here. Half stick up.
Go on.
So he was actually behaving himself, and not because Boris Johnson for months was baiting him. Call a general election. Agree to a general election. Vote with me a general election. And Corbyn, to be fair, wasn't doing it. Then the Lib Dems and the SNP agreed because they thought. I think they thought they could get 16-year-olds on the vote, and then the Speaker didn't allow that motion because that wasn't suitable. And then, I didn't know, because I can understand people not knowing what's going on, but I know from my MP at the time, who is now a former MP because it's a Redwall seat, he told me what happened. Well, he told all of us actually at the CLP meeting what happened that night. So what happened was, although the SNP and Lib Dems had agreed to support Johnson's motion, on the night of the vote, they didn't. They realised that because they wanted certain amendments to it, which weren't going to happen. So then they were willing to vote against it. And basically, Labour MPs were screaming at Corbyn, saying, we've got the numbers to block this, but he wouldn't whip Labour MPs to vote against it. So it is all of those parties' fault.
Yes.
Corbyn was resisting. And at the point at which it was,
no one still waxes lyrical about Joe Swinson. No one goes like, "Oh, if only we'd given him a chance, Phil. If only we'd given Joe Swinson a chance, she could have changed everything."
Right. All I could say about Joe Swinson is when the general election came and the Lib Dem party bus went around, it had a massive picture of her face on it, and I thought, how egotistical is that? Even Boris Johnson didn't do that, did he?
No, did he? I don't think so.
I actually don't know, but. I mean, who does that? Who puts a massive picture of your face on the battle bus? No, it should be the Lib Dems logo or something.
I know. It was all a bit. But then again, I bristled at Jeremy Corbyn. I hate all the cult around Boris Johnson. I just any kind of that kind of egotistical. It's all about me. Politics.
The thing is, I go completely the other way. Like people say, I'm a Starmer supporter. I'm not a Starmer supporter at all. I don't support anyone. I support actions. At the moment, Starmer's action is to allow a Labour government. I support that. Doesn't mean to say I support him. Doesn't mean to say I support all of his policies. There's no one I support. Don't even support myself. Really that simple.
Yes, you do. Do quite well on YouTube.
I get things wrong. I get things wrong all the time.
But no, that's a good point. I mean, the minute you go down that route of personality politics, which is one of the things that I would say about Rishi Sunak, one of his only good things about him is he doesn't have a personality cult like Boris Johnson.
He doesn't have a personality.
Well, he doesn't have a personality. He's have a personality. But neither Starmer. Starmer doesn't have a personality cult either.
No, because again, they don't have the charisma for it.
Yeah, but you don't get the kind of like... If you say something like mildly critical of Starmer, you don't get a million Starmer stands on Twitter telling you that you're bald and you should get a life and move out from your mums and all that kind of stuff.
There are a few. I do follow a few that sometimes.
What, like proper Starmer stands?
Well, they're not necessarily. I'm sure they do the same for any Labour leader. Well, a few exceptions, but they are. They can be a bit mad. Like my attitude is, we need you gather allies, and there'll be people you would like. The problem with the like echo chamber is like the cults, the personality cults. Is what happens is they meet a person. Oh, how are you? What's your view on this? Oh, I agree with that. Brilliant. I like you. What's your view on this? Oh no, I don't agree with that. Right, you go away now because of course you end up in this small group with this fortress mentality, because you're only willing to talk to people who share your every thought. And the thing is, no two intelligent people agree on everything. So basically, you're surrounding yourself with very vacuous people.
Yeah.
And of course, there's not that many of them will agree with you on everything. So then you have the thought, because everyone then is against you. Well, no, they're not. They will agree with you on some things. Take that and disagree on other things.
Well, that's a point that's worth making as well. You know, when you talk about what Starmer promised when he was running for leader, it's not a dictatorship. Labour's not a dictatorship. He has to toe the line to what the shadow cabinet want to do. They take a vote on things. They decide the economic situation's changed and they can't do X, Y, Z. Then,
what I hope they decide is what the bloody public want, because ultimately you need votes. And yes, sometimes the public wants stupid things, but you still need votes.
Yeah.
So you get the votes,
get them in.
And I'm not suggesting you get the votes and then just completely ignore the voters. No, if you promise to deliver a thing, you deliver it. And if you promise to rule something out, you don't deliver it. But it doesn't stop you delivering extra, does it?
Well, get them in, and then hold them to account, rather than holding them to account before they're in power, which is putting the cart before the horse. And also, that's what Rishi Sunak does every week at PMQs. He go, Keir Starmer will stand up and say, "This is terrible. This is awful. Look at all these bad things you've done." And he just stands up and goes, "Yeah, it'd be worse under Labour."
Yeah, well, the Tories are now behaving like they're in opposition. I mean, there was that idiot backbencher who stood up in PMQs today, absolutely ranting and going, "Oh, it's disgraceful, all these strikes. It's absolutely disgusting. Will my Prime Minister tell the Labour Party off for all of these strikes of theirs?" It's like, mate, you're still in government.
You're in power.
Practicing. I know you're practicing for a year's time, but you are right now in government.
Indeed. Get Labour into power, then lose Starmer if he's no good. Not another 5 years of Tory, says Don Do That. Yeah, fair enough. And we're being accused of Starmer apologism. You can't win. Duke Vengeance says, how about not giving a crap about what individual people want and just do what's best for the UK right now, like getting the Tories out? Couldn't agree more. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's where we probably leave it for today. We've got a few minutes over time. Then again, we're a couple of minutes late because I was faffing around with my settings. But sorry for everyone for that technical glitch earlier in the show where I decided to run the intro again. Hopefully that won't happen again. Sorry about that. But yeah, thanks very much for joining us, Phil, and everyone in the chat there. And thanks to all the YouTube members and Patreons. Are you going to be doing your live show tomorrow on a different
tomorrow evening.
Excellent.
I thought I would compare. I thought I would ask the question, who's actually done the most harm to the Tories, Boris Johnson or Liz Truss?
Ooh, okay. That should be interesting. So what time's that?
7 p.m.
7 p.m. on Phil's channel. That's tomorrow. And later on today on the Labour Social channel at 9 o'clock, we will be having the Labour Social, where I'll be joined by various special guests from the world of TikTok and YouTube and Twitter and political commentary. So join us for that. And until next time, thank you so much for watching. Hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.
See you later.